First of all, I want to thank everybody for attending. Today, we're going to talk about leveraging NetBeez speed tests in your environment. We've done a lot of updates and changes, and we're going to talk a little bit about the philosophy behind why we've made some of these changes, and also a little bit about how we're going to be developing going forward. So for those of you that I have not met with or haven't met with in a while, my name is Stephen Pergar. I'm a customer success engineer here at NetBeez. Been here for, I think today is officially 2.5 years to the date, I believe. Oh, no, might be next month. I'll have to double check the December 10th when I started. But it's been an awesome ride, really enjoying my time here. And, what's actually interesting is, talking about innovation for all. When I started with NetBeez, very end of 2019, NetBeez is a distributed enterprise network monitoring solution, mostly physical hardware at remote offices, HQ satellite offices, maybe the data center, testing cloud applications. That's what we were all about. We were one of the best out there. We gave raw data, real-time results, ping every 5 seconds, something a lot of other companies didn't do. And then COVID happened, and we got one of two responses, which is nobody's in the office. So, our NetBeez usage is going to go down a little bit, or it's going to change a little bit, but we have this big gap. We have no visibility outside, to everybody's house. So then we start working on a product. We brought the remote worker. In my opinion, probably the best, or if not, in there is like top 2 or 3 out there, even compared to some of the big names out there. I think it's one of the most complete products. But now we have 2 different products. Some of our customers are on board just for remote agents. Some of them are still on board for the hardware and the satellite offices, remote offices, because now we're in a hybrid model. And a lot of our customers are doing both. They have customers in office, out of office, and it's very important for us to continue to develop features that's benefiting as many people as we can. So when we look at the roadmap over the last year, 12 months, we developed the Wi-Fi metrics for the remote user. That was important. We had it on the Wi-Fi agent, so we wanted it for people that were working from home. Jitter and MOS calculations in real time in 5-second intervals was very important, because a VoIP test, is a point A to point B test. And even for enterprise deployments that have hundreds of agents, it might take a little while to configure all that, but it's pretty stagnant, and it's really for SLAs and stuff like that. So it's once you get it configured, it's set and forget. Now we had hundreds or thousands of remote agents, and they need a click all and done. So we developed that feature, but then we made it available for all agents, because we realized now people are back in offices and people have remote call centers, that data is useful for the network agents as well. Path analysis, very big feature for the entire product suite, very useful, gives you a lot of visibility outside of your network. Over fiber lines, you have no control over. Very, very, very important. Wi-Fi packet capture, one of the features that is a specific feature for a specific agent. It's just something that has been asked about for a while, and we were able to deliver it. PC performance, that feature kind of sounds like remote worker only, but it's not. It's, if you go under, and here I can show you real quick here. If you go under any ping test and go to view history, well, you can do it here too. You can see the historical data on CPU and memory. That became really useful for a customer of ours who was spinning up agents in their AWS, and Amazon gave them the wrong resources for 2 of the 8, the US-based ones, surprisingly, and they were getting failed pings. They were getting 100% CPU load. Then they found out when they ran a command, oh, they gave us the Xeon from 2011, not the Xeon Platinum 2 cores that we ordered for the rest of them. So once they realized that, they were able to reach out to Amazon, how to fix that. So that was really cool to see that used for the regular sensors or network agents. ISP tagging grouping available across the board. Single sign-on with Azure also available. That's backend feature. VPN logic monitoring. That is mostly for the remote agents right now. There could be some application outside of that in the future we may explore, but that was something that we really felt we needed to implement. And then Schedule Test Explorer, that's what we're talking about today. And we also have a feature coming out in a later version of 10. I'm not sure if it's like 1 or 2, but we're talking about doing some gateway testing against a local gateway. So that'll be really cool. And, you know, when we first, NetBeez has always been, like I said before, you have your offices, branch offices, satellite offices, you had your data center, and you had your SaaS applications. Now you have a lot more in the cloud, you have a lot more in the home office, you have this huge work from anywhere, and we need to make sure that we need to scale things and innovate to be able to cover the whole range, not just one part of our users, or we don't want to alienate any of our existing users as well. So with that in mind, for those of you that haven't seen the whole product suite, this is kind of what we offer across the board. You have your wired and wireless sensors. So these are your physical network agents. You have your virtual instances, which is what I happen to leverage for the most part. Very easy to spin those up, which is nice. You can integrate on Catalyst 9395, some extreme switches, load directly on some Linux operating systems within Docker. I run an agent on my file server via Docker. You can run them on AWS, Google, Azure, cloud instances with a combination of like virtual or Dockers. There's options there. And obviously the Windows and Mac sensor as well. So now we're going to go into the historical use of speed test and how that's changing. Historically, speed test was mostly used in 2 capacities: reporting and troubleshooting within our enterprise customers. If they ran it, they usually did it based off of groups or regions or geographic groups or regions for 2 reasons. A, you don't want to run speed tests on like 150 sensors that are all in your network at the same time. You're not going to get accurate results. And B, and this was one of the reasons why I made the change, is if you run more than 20 speed tests at the same time, viewing the individual data was very difficult because we only show the first 20. Yes, reports would allow you to see all of them. And then in version 9, you'll see we made it easier so you can look at it from individual. But there was that limitation for a while, which we have since overcome that. But verifying SLAs, ad hoc troubleshooting, people run speed tests all the time for troubleshooting. That was most of how speed test was leveraged. And we support 3, Ookla, NDT, which is our preferred, and fast.com, which is Netflix. So why NDT? It's open source. Developers love open source. It's easier to implement. It's easier to innovate. It's easier to integrate anything that's open source. That's why developers like it. Ookla is constantly changing. They're not very dev friendly. They've pulled features that we can't integrate into our solution that we're not able to anymore, like custom speed tests. And we're not a fan of that. We want to be able to bring our customers more, not less. It measures download and upload speeds. Fast.com is download only. You can specify specific servers, and the results have been pretty consistent from what our customers have been reporting to us over the last probably year or 2 that we've really kind of made of a recommendation of using NDT over Ookla. The results have been pretty consistent. And then this is the individual speed test section, which I'll show you guys a little bit more. But this was the first step to where if you ran like 500 remote sensor speed tests at the same time, assuming you weren't running them over the VPN tunnel, because that wouldn't give you the results you really want if you're in a, what's what I'm looking for, split tunnel. You could look at each individual very easily as well as on the report. So that was the first step that we made into making some changes to this. You can do 24 hours, 1 week, 2 weeks, and 1 month. And that's actually for all the scheduled tests, not just speed tests. Our focus is going to be those scheduled tests though, mostly. And then version 10 completely redid the section. We have 2D and 3D graphing, which I'll show you, scatter plot for multiple elements, bar graph for single elements. Bar graph scales really far. I've seen it in the hundreds personally, and it's really nice. You can filter based off of personal elements, and there's also new sortable charts. So what does this look like? So let's first look at this real quick. For those of you who haven't seen this, you can look at any of your individual tests and you can go back, like I said, anywhere from 24 hours to 1 month. Really useful for just quickly, somebody submit the ticket, you just want to look at the last speed test from yesterday or earlier today. You know, you don't want to have to go through a bunch of clicks. You can just go agent, schedule test, boom, look at it. You know, first point that you're going to be looking at. Now, the schedule test section for speed test. So by default, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to be a scatter plot with download and upload. And the dots do look small, few reasons. This is designed to scale into hundreds and thousands. But also if you click on latency, then the balls will get bigger. The dots will get bigger based off of latency. There is a cap, like if you have an error or some weird issue where latency is in 1,000, it's not going to take up the whole screen. So we do know that. But by default, it's going to be download, upload. If you just uncheck upload, or if you uncheck all of them, just do upload, for example, you can do that. But it'll be a bar graph, which is really cool. You have a chart over here that is completely sortable by name. Let me move this up. Upload, download, latency, whatever you want to do, you can sort, which is really cool. So if you just want to quickly look at the bottom performers, you can do that. If you click on an agent, it will automatically highlight which one it is, which is really cool. And even if we have the scatter plot, and we'll do latency, it's a little easier. If I click on it, or if I click on it here, it'll highlight the appropriate one. Austin down here, you get the individual test as well, which is really awesome. This is where you're going to get, I think, a lot of use out of this. So especially when you have larger deployments, you can look individual groups. So I only have 2, so it's not going to really yield too much. You can look by agent type as well. ISP, so if you have a bunch of remote sensors out there and there might be an ISP issue, maybe just run the speed test now, look at the results and just check off just the one ISP. I only have Comcast, so it's not a good example. You can do ASN, and you can choose multiple, right? So it's not just choosing one, you can choose multiple. And then the one I really like is by range. So particularly if you have, this is a hover, not a click, by the way. If you have 1,000 remote sensors or 30 regular sense or network agents or whatever, right? And you have an SLA that you have to have for people to work remote, or if you just want to make sure the performance is up to date, it has to be over 100 megabits per second or higher, right? So scales down to like, I don't know, 108. And then you can see all the ones that are under 100. You can zoom into just these ones if you want to. We'll reset the axes there. You can just box select these. That'll affect the chart over here, which is really cool. Zoom in, zoom out. You can, where's the pan button here? So you can move the chart around, which is also awesome. So yeah, there is a ton that you can do with this. It really allows you to get the data that you're looking for very, very, very quickly from the speed test section. So whether it's troubleshooting, whether it's just, I think it's really about the analyzing the data, I think is really, really, really key. Before you really weren't able to do that. Now you have all the data in front of you, and you can very quickly dive into the other data that's available here as well. So I'll leave it at that for now. I do want to go into one other thing, and that is the roadmap. Since we're kind of talking about philosophy, we kind of gone away from this is when we're going to do this to these are all the things that we're talking about, researching, early development, mid-cycle development, stuff like that. So obviously there's a lot on here. One of our big goals is the network team is very busy, and a lot of our tool can really be leveraged by help desk nowadays. So we want to make it easier, make it more accessible to the help desk, whether it's reading the data, analyzing data, using the data, using our troubleshooting tools, whatever have you. We really want to get a lot of the load back to the help desk, because by the time it makes it to the network team, it's very expensive, right? You already have 50 projects and refreshes and everything else going on. And now you're looking at a network issue that realistically could have been solved by somebody in the help desk team. So we have 4 categories: UX improvements, integrations, new features and functions, and backend. None of these are guaranteed that are going to happen this year by any means. Some of these definitely are, but depending on priorities and what our customers are really needing will depend on when we'll do it. And to be honest, it doesn't necessarily mean 100% we are going to bring this out. So take that with a grain of salt. If something we're researching, like IPv6 is a perfect example under new functions, they've been talking about that for 10 years. It's not relevant enough for us to spend development resources on bringing that, when literally I think I've only had one customer bring it up in the last year. That was important, right? You guys would rather have a whole new report section, better user onboarding, and other things to support your infrastructure than IPv6 for the most part. I'm not saying it's true for everybody, but that would be like kind of an example of a less popular feature we've seen when I've surveyed everybody. But, you know, kind of going over these real quick, remote worker SLA. So we want to be able to allow you to set those kinds of things, metrics and stuff like that for remote workers. Pre-done target templates, we've heard about that a lot. We want to talking about the help desk user onboarding. That is a high priority right now. We want to make it better onboarding for help desk members to bring on the NetBeez, to use NetBeez, to be able to use this tool to reduce ticket times. Report section, that also is pretty high priority. I would say sooner rather than later is our goal, but obviously that's subject to change. ServiceNow and Teams integrations and notifications and webhook notifications. Those are things you'll probably see in smaller refreshes. Like we may put one of those into a smaller patch. You know, definitely stuff we want to do, but just probably mid-level. SSO, we want to add more of that later on this year. For functionality, things like scheduled test alerting, that's one that I've seen a fair bit. Would like to see it this year. I'm not 100% sure. I would say of all of these, it's probably most likely to make it this year than the rest. But again, it just depends on ongoing customer feedback and what the development feedback is on some of these features. Just like the many-to-one path analysis, big improvement we would like to do. It just really depends on what customer feedback is. HTTP transactions, probably the biggest feature on this list when it comes to resources, because there's so much we want to do with it. We want to do it right. So that would probably be like a big feature in an upcoming release that we would spend, like that would be the showcase that'd be coming out most likely. And then backend improvements, things like scale out architecture. A lot of these are like already underway. There's already resources being allocated, but they're just like, they can take multiple releases of just a handful of developers working on just the beginning parts before we put in the full development swing. So, so those are things that are already underway, but it's just they take a while because there's only so many devs we can put to that versus some of the other things. So, so that is pretty much where our minds are, where kind of we're putting some of our resources at. You know, this is always subject to change, right? COVID happened. We didn't expect to literally make a 180 and go a completely different route, and then, you know, have like a whole two different style kind of customers that we're now supporting, as well as a lot of hybrid customers. So always subject to change, but that's kind of where we're heading. And I would probably say when it comes to roadmap stuff, definitely want to discuss it on our QBR. I don't want to go too deep into this. Also, because I need to talk to the dev team a little bit deeper to get a little bit more information about all this. But on the scheduled test section, definitely want to open up the Q&A if you guys have any questions, whether it's using functionality, anything like